Hello and welcome to TrackVia's Turning Ideas into Apps, our low-code TrackVia demo. Our presenter today will be Brandon Gill. But first, let's cover a couple of housekeeping issues so everybody's on the same level. We have started everyone on listen-only mode. Please stay in listen-only mode so everyone can hear the presentation. If you do have a question, please submit that question via the chat window, and we will try to follow up with those questions live after the presentation. If we don't have time to answer those, we will follow up with an email. This webinar is being recorded, and we will send it to you in a follow-up email within 48 hours after this is over. I think that takes care of all of our housekeeping. So Brandon, I will turn it over to you, and everybody enjoy the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle. So hello, everyone. My name is Brandon Gill. I am a senior solutions consultant here at TrackVia. A little bit of an agenda of what we're going to run through today. We're going to start by just talking about who is TrackVia. Some people on the call may have never heard of TrackVia, so I'll give you a little overview into who we are as a company and what we do. Next, we're going to talk briefly about what is low code. Low code is the software space that TrackVia plays in. It's also just a term that some people are familiar with and others might not be as familiar with. So we'll cover off on what that means. We'll talk a little bit about who can use low code technology, and then we are going to spend a majority of our time actually creating and demoing a simple app using TrackVia so you can get a feel for what the platform looks like and how it's used by many of our customers. So a little bit about TrackVia. We were founded in 2006, and for some context, the origination of the term low code and low code software is started around 2005, so we really are one of the pioneers in this space. We're headquartered in Denver, Colorado, about 75 employees and around 350 customers, a little bit over that number actually. I've also showcased just a couple of those customers on the right-hand side of your screen here, the North Face, KSI, Stearns, Honeywell, Sands, and Deep Roots Harvest. And I don't show these customers just to say, here are some marquee customers that we have that have well-known names or anything like that. I showcase them more because I like to point out the diversity of our customer base. We work across a lot of different industries, solving a lot of different problems. And I think you'll understand why as we go through this and we talk a little bit about what low code technology is. The North Face uses us in order to speed up their manufacturing process when they get custom orders brought in. KSI uses us in the field for safety inspections on large equipment. Stearns Home Loans uses us for a variety of back office process. Honeywell uses us for procurement. The Sands uses us for anti-money laundering, and Deep Roots Harvest really runs their full operations on TrackVia. They almost treat us like an ERP system. So lots of different use cases for low code, lots of different customers that we help. So it really is a fit that can be used across a lot of different organizations. So what is low code? When we talk about low code, what do we mean by that? Well, the textbook definition of low code is what I've got up on the screen here. If you were to Google search what is low code technology, this is what you would get. Software that provides a development environment used to create applications through graphical user interfaces and configuration instead of traditional hand-coded computer programming. So when I think of that definition, excuse me, it's a little bit cut and dry. If we really think about what low code is, it is just a series of tools that are going to allow you to build very robust, very scalable applications for any area of your business without needing to know how to code. And that's really the important piece there, is that this technology can really be used by the actual business users who know the process to build out these applications, not necessarily the IT team. But we'll cover that here in the next slide. I also like to talk a little bit about the spectrum of low code. So low code is a term that is used to cover a lot of different technologies. If you look at like a Gartner or Forrester report, they'll use low code in different ways. They're starting to chunk up kind of what is low code into different segments, but by and large, you get this pretty large spectrum of what is considered low code. Where on the left-hand side, you have more of the lightweight tools like Excel and Access. These are effectively low code tools. You can build very robust things on Excel and in Access without really needing to know how to code. The problem there is scalability. Eventually, there's a natural kind of breaking point where you need something that's a little more robust for your system in order to continue to do these workflows. Whereas on the other side of the spectrum, you've got companies like Appian and OutSystems that are technically considered low code, but they're really more of what I would think of as developer toolkits. They give you a framework to work inside of, but you still do have to know how to code in order to build anything meaningful within those tools. For TrackVia, we fit right in the middle in what I would consider to be a true low-code space. So you can build very robust applications. In fact, the application we're going to look at in this demonstration will not have any coding. So you can do a lot of things without code, but we do have some additional features and some more robust applications that do use some code. So you can kind of dip your toe into that coding water a little bit to build out that scalability and build out that user experience a little bit more. So you get the best of both worlds. Touched on this a little bit, but who is low code for? Really, it's for everybody. Business users are going to be our primary focus. We really try to empower the business to be able to build these applications because the business knows the workflows that are happening. They know the data that needs to be tracked the best. So giving them a low code tool like TrackVia, they can build out these applications very easily. But we do have a lot of IT professionals that utilize TrackVia as well as just another tool in their tool belt. The nice thing about low-code technologies is they can be built quicker than hand-coded, and when you're starting something from scratch, it kind of gives you a jumping off point. So many IT organizations utilize tools like TrackVia in order to build these applications for the business and deliver that quicker. So we're going to jump into the demonstration now. And with the demonstration we're going to focus on a quality control example today. So again, if we look at all the customers we have, quality control is not the only thing we do. It's just one thing you can do with the tools we're going to look at today. And this is the workflow that we're going to go through. We're going to start out as an inspector who's going to do a mobile inspection on one of our products. We're going to use an iPad to showcase that. The inspector is then going to fail that product and assign a fault code to it. That'll kick off a workflow that goes to the QC manager who gets alerted of the failure and then starts chatting with a supplier for a corrective action for that product. The supplier is effectively a third-party user of TrackVia, which is very common for us, who is outside of the main company we're working in, who will then fix that corrective action and send it back to approval for the QC manager. Meanwhile, all this information will be tracked on real-time analytics, so we can do some data tracking. What I always tell people is anything that can be tracked in TrackVia can be charted in TrackVia, so we can look at trend lines and things like that. So let's jump into it here. Get out of my slideshow there, and if we go over to this tab, we are now looking at TrackVia. Now I want to start by giving everyone a little orientation to the screen here. So in our top left-hand corner, we've got our TrackVia logo. This can of course be custom branded to your organization, your logo, so that this really looks and feels like it is your system, as can the URL up here. But this is really just going to serve as our home button. If I click it, it'll always take us back to the main dashboard on whatever application we are on. Next to that, you'll see that I'm currently on this quality control inspection application, but I've mentioned many times how flexible TrackVia is, how we solve a lot of different problems for a lot of different people. So it's not like we have to do quality control. It's not like we even have a quality control module that we are going to force your process into. If I hit this drop down here, what you're going to see is all the different applications that I have in this particular account of TrackVia. Asset tracking, inventory tracking, invoice approval, production management, project tracking, and then of course we have the quality control inspection that we're on. All of these things are just use cases we commonly hear that we've used the tools of TrackVia to build out examples of. So if you've got vacation tracking, that's something that we internally do at TrackVia with TrackVia, you could build out a workflow for that. So really any workflow, any data that you need to track and move between people or departments is fair game within TrackVia. Below that, I'm currently logged in as an admin, so I have access to this admin toolbar. This is where I'll do any of the building within this application. We do have very robust roles and permissions as well that can allow you to permiss down so that people can only see data that's relevant to them or only data they should be seeing. But for demonstration purposes, I'll stay logged in as the admin. Below that, you'll see I've got 4 different dashboards in this particular application. You can have as many dashboards as you want in an application, but what dashboards are used for is to display data to the end user that's relevant to them. And it's done so on a series of different elements. So you'll see I've got some shortcut buttons, a grid type view here. We've got some charts that you'll see scattered throughout this application, as well as a map view that's showing me where my inspections have occurred. So we'll dive into the actual workflow here. I'm going to start by kicking off a QC inspection, and I'm actually going to do so on a mobile device. So I'm going to bring over this screen here, which is reflecting off of an iPad that I've got sitting on the desk in front of me. Now at TrackVia, we do have a native mobile application. So what that means, if I hit this home button on the iPad, you're gonna see an actual TrackVia app that I'm gonna click into. And on the app, you have all the functionality that you get on the desktop. You can see the charts are rendering in the same way. If I were to click into that map view, it would render the same way. So it makes it very easy to switch between the two. Essentially, anything we build on the web is going to be available on the mobile, and there's no separate code bases to manage or anything like that. The other advantages that we get with the mobile is we can actually take advantage of the mobile device, which is what you'll see me do here as we go throughout this inspection. So let's start a QC inspection. When I start a QC inspection, I'm going to be prompted with a custom form that I've set up that's going to ask some questions that are relevant to my process. The date and time is the first one, and this is just defaulted to the current date and time from when I hit that start button. It doesn't have to be, but sometimes we can put these form rules in place to make it easier for the end user to fill in this information. We'll say, what's the inspector's name who's doing this? And I'll just select my own name. This can also be defaulted, but for demonstration purposes, I keep it open. What product are we working on? So for my fictitious company, I've got 4 products. Let's say we're working on a bearing house. And what's the serial number? Now I can type in the serial number, but again, taking advantage of the mobile device, I can also scan it. So I've got a barcode here in front of me, and we can scan this in. If I can get it to hold steady there, and it'll pull in that information. So if we're doing inventory tracking and we got a warehouse of a bunch of different parts, we want to do barcode scanning, we can do that using the mobile device. We're also going to tag the location of the actual mobile device. So I'm here in Broomfield, Colorado. So this is where the inspection is occurring. So if you've got multiple warehouses, for example, or multiple facilities, that's a great tool as well. We'll hit next on that, which will take us to the next step of our workflow. So all of our initial information is filled in here. And as I scroll down, because I selected that bearing house, I'm going to get inspection instructions for it. I get a visual of what it should look like. I get some product documentation as well as some tolerance limits. So we can put in work instructions and things like that that will follow the user throughout the workflow. Scrolling down, I've got some inspection steps. Again, these fields are totally customizable. So if you're looking at this going, well, I have way more questions than that, or I don't have that many questions, or I would ask this or rearrange it differently, it's all fair game, and we'll cover that here in just a few minutes. But for now, is the wiring properly labeled? We'll say yes, and I've got an example of what that should look like. Are the gaskets tightly sealed? We'll say yes. Where's the safety sticker? Maybe it's on the front. These are just some drop-down fields we're using. And then this visual inspection result. This is actually a show hide rule within TrackVia, so it's another one of our form rules that we've got set up here. So if I pass our visual inspection result, we can just continue on with the form. However, if I fail it, I'm going to be prompted with another field that's going to say, what's the fault code? Why are you failing this inspection? If I click into that, you'll see I've got fault codes that have some different numbers associated to them. That's because the fault codes are also associated to the part I selected. And we'll just say there was shipping damage. Put in a tolerance measurement here. If I was out of tolerance or anything, I could flag that and fail the inspection as well. Some notes I can put in. One of my favorite things to do is actually use the talk to text feature. These are my notes. So if you're working with gloves or anything like that, it can be a very handy tool for the field. And then finally, we can actually take a photo. So this is great for quality use cases. I'll grab a photo of my water bottle that's sitting here. And then we can also draw on that photo. We want to call out any area. Now, the other thing that's great about the mobile features of TrackVia that I always like to call out is we do have an offline capability as well. So if you're doing any work in a warehouse that doesn't have great service, or we do a lot of work with oil and gas, agriculture, things like that that are more field service based, you can still collect this information while offline. And then when you sync back up to the internet, it'll all just sync back to the database. So that's a really great feature if you're in one of those areas. Finally, we'll do a signature. What I tell people about the signature is it's great for a lot of reasons. Some use cases absolutely require it, so it's good that it's there. But we do have a full audit history in TrackVia, so you can always see who did what, when, and where within the system at any given time. So for highly regulated industries, that can be a big plus. And we'll go ahead and complete this inspection. That'll take us back out to the dashboard. And if I move our mobile device over and I refresh the screen here, it's going to show me, here's the one that we just worked on with that failure. We've got some conditional formatting here, so we know that we can move on to the next step of our process. And in the spirit of moving on to the next step of our process, I want to showcase something that happened on my other screen. So if I bring over my email here, you're going to see that 0 minutes ago, I received this email notification letting me know that we had a failure. And this is an email that's essentially being sent to our manager telling them that I had a failure. It gives some information about what was inspected. We also have a live button here. And this is information that's coming directly out of TrackVia. So you can assign any of these email notifications to happen on a time basis or on an action basis so that you can keep that data moving throughout the workflow instead of trying to push around, custom emails that might get lost in the thread of things. So now that we've gone through our inspection, I can move over to our QC manager type role. So this is the person that actually needs to interact with the supplier and do something about this failure. And I've got some different data elements. I've got the failures that need a corrective action assigned here. I've got some other supplier information here. So again, data that's relevant to the end user being displayed on this dashboard. And I can click into this inspection that we just did here. And in doing so, I can see all the information that we just captured. I also notice that there's some locks by it. So my permissions don't allow me to actually change that inspection, but I can see all the information and I can assign a corrective action. So in doing so, I'll hit this plus button and it'll bring up a form that'll say, what exactly are we doing? Who are we assigning this corrective action to? I've got my list of suppliers and I'll assign it to Augustus Corp in this case. And we'll say there was shipping damage, whatever we might put there. And you might have a more robust process. Of course, this is dumbed down a little bit for demonstration purposes, but we're going to say this is the non-conformance report that we're going to put together for them. We can add that into this inspection and hit save on that. And what we'll see when we go back out to the dashboard is that this will now fall out of this working queue here because we have essentially assigned that corrective action. So we can start to work through our list of tasks that we need to do for the day. So that's a really handy way to look at the information we've got here. Now that we've done that, we can jump to the supplier portal. And keep in mind, the supplier portal in this example would be a third-party user. So it's a pretty common use case for TrackVia to extend out TrackVia's usage to your suppliers or to other people you might work with because it keeps all of the data within the system. It's not a necessity, but it is something that we see quite a bit. And with our roles and permissions, you can do that. So now we're looking at things from the supplier world, specifically for Augustus Corp. So I can see all the different corrective actions that I've had over the history of Augustus Corp. I can see why we've had different issues and things like that. And then on what we call our lanes view here, I can see that corrective action that the manager has assigned is sitting in this queue for pending acknowledgement. And this is just another way for us to interact with the data. And what I can do is just pick this card up and move it over to the investigating cause status. That might send another email notification back to the manager, letting them know that I am looking at it. There's a variety of things that can happen at that point. And then what I'll do is I'll click into this here. Takes us to the form again, where I can see all the information that was filled out. And then as a supplier, I can say, what was the cause of this? Maybe we had a bad batch that was shipped. And our corrective action is I will send a new part, something like that. We can also attach information here. So I'm just going to grab a PDF and drop it into the supplier attachment, but this might be receipts, this might be proof of purchase, this might be a variety of things that we can attach, but PDFs, Word docs, Excel files, that's all fair game there. And we'll say maybe this attachment type is product specifications or something like that. We'll also move this from investigating cause to corrective action implemented, hit save on that. And when we jump back out to our dashboard, you'll see that card has jumped again over to the corrective action implemented stage. Finally, to round out this workflow, we'll go back to our QC manager dashboard, where that corrective action is now in this working queue of tasks that I need to approve or reject, or corrective actions I need to approve or reject rather. And if I click into this one, again, we see all the information we've captured. We see the non-conformance notes, we see the cause, we see the corrective action, we've got the PDF that we attached there, and we just say, do we approve or reject this corrective action? And I will approve it, which will cause it to fall out of that working queue as well. So we covered a lot of information here, but just to round it all off, we started as an inspector on a mobile device where we were able to inspect a product. We failed that product and moved it over to our QC manager to assign a corrective action to our supplier. As a supplier, we were able to be in TrackVia and actually do something and alert of that corrective action and fix it. And then as a manager, we were able to approve that corrective action from the supplier. Now, in the time that we have left, there's a couple of other features of TrackVia that I want to highlight here at a high level. One is just our analytics capabilities. So you've seen a few different charts sprinkled throughout this application on different dashboards. I've got this dashboard set up just for analytics, so it's only going to show some charts and things like that. You'll see we've got a variety of different chart types like Pareto charts and bar charts, pie charts, line charts, things like that. So again, any data that you can track in TrackVia, you can chart in TrackVia. And you can chart in a variety of different ways. And the nice thing about these charts is they're all totally drillable. So if I wanted to see the inspections that have happened this particular week, I can click into it and you can see that I've did an inspection a couple days ago. We can also see the inspection that we just did here on this webinar. I can click into that. I can see, again, all the information that we captured, and all of this stuff is fair game to click into and learn more about. So totally drillable analytics. These can be put into reports. I've seen these rolled up to management reports, a lot of different things you can do there, and they're all going to update in real time. And really the benefit of that is because we are tracking the data in the same system that we're charting it in, you're going to get that real-time feedback. So all of this stuff will always be up to date. The last few minutes here, I want to show you how easy it is to actually make some changes within TrackVia. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to start by putting a field on a table and then put that field onto a form as a new piece of information we can collect for our inspections. So what I'm going to do is from the admin toolbar here, I'm going to go to our tables dropdown, and underlying TrackVia is a relational database for any of these applications. So these are the tables that make up that relational database. And I'm going to start by editing our QC inspections table. That'll take me to our table editor. And on the left-hand side of the table editor, we get all of our different field types. So text and number fields we're going to type into typically. Drop-downs and checkboxes are great to keep our data very clean and give users choices of what they can select. We've got some date and time fields, some specialty fields, location fields, and then finally calculated fields where really any calculation you might do in Excel, you can do in TrackVia. In the middle is all the raw data that's being collected on this table. So we might not want to expose all this data to the end user, but in its most raw sense, this is everything that's being collected on this table. And if I want to add a new field to this table, all I have to do is say, what field type do I want? And I'm going to take a drop-down list in this case, and just drag it over and drop it in place. And we can give it a name, maybe is there a manager present? And we can give it some options. We'll say yes, we'll say no, and hit save on that. And that's really all it takes for us to add a new field onto a table. There's no custom coding, there's none of that. You just have to drag it over and drop it in place. Just realized I also forgot an A in manager. There we go. So we can include that, and then on our forms, all we have to do is actually add this new field onto a form to start to collect information on it. So our forms are broken out by tables as well, so I can go down to our QC inspection form and click on that. And what we have in our form editors, it looks very similar to our table editor. Left-hand side is the field we can use. Right-hand side is the information that we want to fill in. And you can see there's the one for is the manager present. And maybe that's a new piece of information I want to collect whenever we start an inspection. So I can just drag this over and drop it in place. I can make it bigger, make it smaller. We can change the colors of these things. Maybe I don't want this to be a gray. Maybe I want this section to be more of a light blue. Maybe I want to make this field required. So on the individual fields, we can set up different rules. So let's make this a required field. And then we'll hit save on that. And once we hit save on that, everything in TrackVia is going to update in real time. So this is now readily available for us to use and start to collect that new piece of information. So if we jump back out to our dashboards here, I'm going to bring back over our mobile device. So now if we were to start a QC inspection, just as we did before, we're going to be taken to that form, but now you'll see it's in blue. And then the question, is there a manager present, is available to us with a yes or no as a drop-down. You'll also see there's a little asterisk by it. That means it's a required field, so I actually cannot move forward without filling in that information. So again, we can make these forms as simple as possible and really make them easy for our end users to know what information is needed to fill out, what information maybe is not required to fill out, and just make it very user-friendly for them. All right, so we've got about 5 minutes left here. We do have a couple of questions in the chat that I want to get to, but I want to thank everybody for joining us today for this demonstration of TrackVia. A couple of final notes as we get into the questions section. Just to recap a little bit of what Michelle started us off with, an email with a recording of this webinar will be sent to everyone within 48 hours. If you want to share it around or anything, you certainly can feel free to do that. We also do value your feedback on these webinars. We try to do these monthly as a way to introduce people to low code, introduce folks to TrackVia. So there is a short survey that will come up at the end of this webinar that I'd really appreciate if you fill out. Helps us know if what we're covering is relevant and helps keep these webinars fresh. And if you have any immediate questions that you want to direct toward me, I've included my email here. It's just my first name and last name at trackvia.com. So if you've got any additional questions that maybe we don't get to here and you need a point of contact, you can feel free to reach out to me. Now, a couple of questions that have come in through the chat bar here. We won't get to all of these questions, so we will email out anybody who asked a question that we don't get to today. But one of the questions was, can we have different colorings on those pictures when we're doing the QC checklist and we're actually drawing on the photos? The short answer there is not really. We have 3 main colors, black, white, and yellow there. We just haven't really had a need for additional colors, but if there is a need out there for why you would need to draw in a different color than what's available there, certainly willing to hear that and let our product team know about that preference. Let's see, what's another good one that we've got here? Oh, this is one that I think gets asked in most of these webinars, and it's a question that we get quite a bit anyway, so I'm always happy to cover off on it. And that is, what is TrackVia's integrations capabilities with other systems? So it's a great question, and the simple answer is we have a couple of different ways that we can integrate with other systems. So TrackVia as a tool has an open and bidirectional API, so it allows us to tie into any other system that has an API as well and share information. We also have an integrations platform that we work with that comes with a host of different pre-built connectors that allows you to build these integrations without any coding. That's powered by a company called Workato, which is a best-in-class iPaaS solutions. That's integration platform as a service. And we work closely with them as the only OEM partner to Workato. So we're able to pass their services along to our customers for a cheaper rate because they're using TrackVia with Workato. We've got a little bit of time for one more question. This is a good one that was seeing in the questions chat, and that is, what is TrackVia hosted on? So that's a very good question. So we are a completely cloud-hosted system, so there's no on-premise offerings of TrackVia. Obviously, we do have the offline capabilities on the mobile device, but as far as hosting, we are hosted in Amazon Web Services. So that's the way that we get hosted. You've got a couple different hosting options if needed. We have government compliant cloud within Amazon Web Services that some of our government contractors and customers that have personal information may take advantage of. Most of our customers are hosted in a multi-tenant environment, which has a lot of security parameters that Amazon has already set up, but that government cloud is a little bit more secure. We can do private environment hostings, and then we do also have HIPAA compliant clouds as well. So we have a handful of healthcare customers within TrackVia's customer group that need a HIPAA compliant cloud. So those are kind of the 3 offerings that we have of how you can be hosted, both in the multi-tenant or one of the private environments, but we are all hosted on Amazon Web Services. So I don't think we're gonna have time to get to any more questions here, and we are hitting that 11:30 Mountain Time mark, but I wanna thank everybody again for taking the time to go through this webinar with me, and there will be a short survey at the end that I would really appreciate if you guys took some time to fill out. Thanks again, everyone.